Well, gracious greetings, Say Stephen family and guests. Welcome to another edition of Living Water for a Thirsty Thursday. Don't worry, be happy. Yes, you guys have heard that before. There's even songs about it. Don't worry, be happy. Do you have your happy dance? Do you have your way to celebrate? Do you do the Hercules?
Oh, Hercules.
Something just to, relieve that pressure. Prayerfully, the takeaways that you'll get today as we talk about worry will be that of speaking more about what worry is, what stress is, and what anxiety is. The scripture that I'd like to read comes from Philippians, the 4th chapter and the 6th verse. It simply says, "Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God." My grandfather told me a long time ago, and you may have heard this before, worry is the dark room in which all negatives can be developed. Grandma also said, I'm sure you heard, if you're going to worry, don't pray. And if you're going to pray, you already know, don't worry. But worry is one of those things that gets us. And if you look at this from a clinical perspective, worry, if you would, has to do with the inside. Worry, a lot of times, speaks about the future and what the future has in its uncertainties and what we cannot control as things that we typically worry about. If we hear that there's potential for job loss, if we hear there's a potential for a famine, if we hear there's potential for a health issue or concern, we start to worry about it. Not necessarily that it's here, but that it is coming, and we worry. And I just want us to really grasp and understand that God doesn't want us in this place of worry. Now, scientifically, clinically, they will let you know that worry in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing, in that worry can move us to the place that we actually problem solve and resolve issues, which is exactly what we want to do. It's when we worry a little bit too long that moves us to the next one, which is stress. Stress is not necessarily something that happens mentally. It's actually a physiological response to an external stressor. And so that's simply speaking, yes, it has actually occurred that I've lost my job, or the threat is so imminent that even if it hasn't happened, my body is chemically reacting, that all of a sudden endorphins are being released. And if I don't do something with those fight or flight endorphins, they kind of sit inside. And, that's when we start having these illnesses with our bodies and different challenges because of those endorphins staying in our bodies too long, because it really is like a drug being released. And we either need to exercise to mitigate it, or run, or do something with it to get rid of it. And so that is the relationship between worry and stress. The next one is anxiety. And anxiety is actually a combination or a hybrid of worry and stress. It is a physiological response, and it is also an emotional, mental response. But if you would, it's kind of the culmination of the two. When we get to the point where we're anxious, we really are just kind of in that place where we're nervous. We can become dysfunctional in a lot of areas of our life, all of those things. Well, in this text, we have Paul talking to the church at Philippi, and he's making it very clear that we don't have to be careful. And this word careful in Greek actually speaks to being anxious or having anxiety, which again is at the pinnacle, which also means not having stress or worry. He says for nothing. I mean, whether it's your child that's injured, if it's you that's injured, if it's losing a job, it's COVID-19, if it's political stressors, if it's social issues, and we have a lot of issues going on a lot. And that's the main reason we're talking about it, because we are worrying about some things. We do have some stress about some things. We are a little anxious about those things that we can't control, those things that seem to be uncertain. But he says, don't be uncertain. Don't be one that is careful. Don't be one that is anxious. Don't be one that is worrying for nothing, for anything under the sun. He says, but in everything, I love that. But in everything, by prayer, by talking with the God and by having a closeness with God, having intimacy with God, and knowing that God is in control. Prayer automatically speaks of some trust. When we talk to God, to know that he has it, like the saying, if I'm going to pray, don't worry. And if I'm going to worry, ain't no need in praying. And our supplications. He says, but do this with thanksgiving. That's the part I love. That's the whole don't worry, be happy. I mean, you can get excited, not because of the circumstance or the situation that we find ourselves in, but we can be happy knowing that I've prayed to God and God's got it. Man, whichever way this goes, grace and mercy will abound. I mean, we know the scripture says, yeah, there can be a thorn in my flesh, but his grace is sufficient. Yes, I may not be healed on this side from this illness, but I know when I walk through death's door into God's glory, then I will be healed on this side because there's no more sickness. There's no more sorrow. I may not be rich over here, but he has me a mansion waiting over there. So he says, don't worry. Be happy. In essence, what it's saying is keep the big picture and know that God is in control. With thanksgiving, he says, then just let your requests be made known unto God. I love this word request because when you think about the be careful for nothing, it means in our minds we are Rolodexing about something. Something is unresolved and they are stacking. He says, man, let go of that stuff. Give it to me. All those requests, all those thoughts, all that Rolodexing you're doing, just pass it on to me. I got this as well as I have you. I'm looking forward to us digging into this a little bit further, but the scripture I wanted to read to close this out comes from the 8th verse, just a couple of verses down. Listen at this. This is a tactic that we can use, if you would, to help mitigate worry, having issues with stress and anxiety. It says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. That's huge. Well, I'm looking forward to us digging into this a little bit further. And I pray that you've already gleaned a couple of tools to help you to not worry, but to be happy. Tune in next week as we talk about but. As always, I pray that you make God proud in all you say, think, and do.